For my latest release called Horizon that I released a couple of weeks back, the main melody part that I used a fairly basic Serum part, Serum patch that I designed. Very straightforward. There's not much to it, but I'm going to do a quick breakdown here of how I use this, and especially within the context of the melodic house genre, how a simple and repetitive part with a lot of subtle variation can really help drive the song to keep the interest of the audience and to keep the song moving and still portraying that emotion while still having enough variety to make the song interesting. So this is what the melody sounds like within the context of the song. I'm just going to play it for you. So the part by itself is, again, fairly simple. It's a short pluck sound. As you can see here, it's got a fairly quick attack, very short release, has one oscillator running, and the main thing that I have automated here has been the cutoff. So adding a cutoff range here, and then inside Logic, just making all these varieties for the cutoff to keep it sounding interesting, because a lot of the sounds that part is very repetitive. There's some variety to it, but it's the driving force of this whole song. And so by itself, it sounds like this. Very simple sound, very plucky and very short. From here, the first thing I add to this is using Logic's internal chroma glow distortion. I've been using this quite a bit lately because it's very simple and intuitive, and for my needs, for using some subtle distortion, it helps out. So if you listen to this, once I turn this on, it's not going to be that much of a difference, but you have to remember that once everything else is there in place, these little nuances, like just a little bit of overdrive, helps drive this part forward and make it audible without it being overwhelming. So that's the first thing I add to it. And then I will typically, for the main lead, I will create a bus channel inside Logic and have a harmonic part that I'll come to later during the chorus. The next thing that I add here is a nice reverb from Valhalla Room. And then the delay that really makes the sound work, in my opinion. So. Next thing I add is Clipper, once again to bring the edge of the sound up a little bit to be able to help it cut through. So here's without it, with it. And the next thing is just cutting off all the lows so that if anything comes down here, it's not going to interfere with the other frequencies. And then after that, there is a sidechain effect, which is not being used during this part. It's at a later part, and also using Endless Smile later for the bridge section, which I'll show you as well. So these are really the parts that help drive it. And so if I do this, if I add these individually as the section is going on, you'll get a better perspective of it. So. So the harmonic part that I add to the lead here is so that, again, this is a subtle part, but to hear it by itself. So this is what the main lead sounds like on this part. some of the filter cutoff that's happening. And then with the harmonic part. The harmonic part is very subtle, but it creates a higher frequency so that when everything else is happening during that part, it just helps drive the part, the main melody part, so that it's still more audible without it just being louder. Again, another very subtle part, so if I take this off, that's when you can really notice. The other two effects that I have that are turned off here, which was a Kickstarter and Endless Smile, I'm using for this build-up section right here. So again, if you can see here, a lot of this, including some of the reverb as well, has some automation as well, because on certain parts I want it to be a little bit lower or have a little bit of variety. Now here for this build section, I wanted to use the same sound, but I wanted to have more of just a more subtle build. So this is what it sounds like. Anyway, that part works really nicely, in my opinion. So it goes through this section, and then all of it coming together again with this sound. Here's the last chorus section, again, just so you can hear how that melody that we started with, again, being repetitive, still builds up into this whole section. So to me, when developing melodic house, it's a lot of repetition, and ultimately the vibe that you want is not very hard-hitting and heavy, but there is a lot of nuance. Even though this may not look like a complicated composition, there's a lot of small things happening that drive that and kind of keep the engagement and interest while still keeping that mood and that feel that you're starting to develop into it. A lot of what I like about this style is the repetitiveness and sort of that mood that it's able to create. And so getting deeper into the style, having very simple melodies that are writing above that repetitive arpeggio sounding melody is what really works well with this style. And so this is an example of that. I'm going to do another video about this song, going into more detail about the diva glide bass part, which is fairly commonly used, but I think, again, helps really establish this style. And I know a lot of people like Lane 8 and Ben Bomer and people use this style to be able to give it that organic feel, and that sliding bass sound I think works really well with this. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this and learned something from it. I'm going to link the song below if you'd like to listen to it. Thanks for watching.